can't do it in both. I'm off of this other computer. I don't have many slides. I just got a couple. Okay. Those just coming in, make sure you have your clicker out and tent cards. Hey, good morning. Okay, how about a response? Let's try this again. Good morning. Morning. For those of you just coming in, make sure please have your clickers out, and it would be very nice to have your tent cards so our guests can get to know who you are. Okay? So we're going to get going. Again, welcome to our base Friday class. This is going to be an exciting class. But first of all, I have a clicker question. All right. Who is going to win the AFC championship game? Yeah, who's going to win? Whoops. So A is the Broncos. I was going to do A Broncos and B Broncos, but I thought I just should be fair. So let's click in. BC is the frequency. Baker Charlie. Baker Charlie. Okay, hurry up in, guys. Clickers out, name cards out. All right. So today is very exciting. We have some really special guests with us. And the whole intent of today is we're going to look at that business chemistry survey that you all took. And the objectives for today are, one, for you to find out more about yourself and people who are similar to you. But also you're going to figure out how to work with people that might not have the similar traits as you. And that's why you're sitting in different areas. So it's my pleasure to welcome Deloitte here. They're excited to be here. And they're going to kind of facilitate the session this morning. And so let's give a nice warm welcome to Scott Heckman.
I get the equipment right. Am I good? Hello, everybody. Wow. I know you already had your good morning out just earlier, so that I guess we're done. One and done there. Hello, everybody. Scott Heckman here. Very, very pleased to be with all of you this morning. I actually would like to see a few show of hands. I know we've got the clickers, but we're going to do it old school here. I'm wondering how many of you in the last few years have had to work in teams, either in school or in a job you have or in your social life or things that you do. How many people think getting the idea down about how you work in teams is fairly important? Let's see a show of hands. All right, that's a good start. I'm going to talk in just a second about kind of what Deloitte does, only to give you a perspective around what kind of the business world demands in terms of working together, playing together, getting along, that kind of thing. So how many people think if I were to call on them, and I'm not going to, you could share, what consulting firm does? Does anybody have an idea around what a consulting firm does? Let's see a show of hands. Okay. I see Rob back there who works for Deloitte Consulting raised his hand. That's excellent. I'm glad to see that. So in its kind of basic concept, consulting is around helping companies solve problems, right? So guessing if you're sitting here, you're interested in some sort of business background, and you may be doing things in the future around helping your own company or helping other companies solve problems. This session today is not about Deloitte. I have one other slide that I'm going to cover very briefly. But ultimately, it's important, I think, that you kind of understand where we fit into the business world as we talk about why we think this kind of stuff is important, right? So you can see here, we basically have 3 different kinds of business in consulting. So those of you who like technology, we help clients solve problems using technology. Those of you who like the human capital element, we help clients implement systems and processes around compensation, around evaluation, those kinds of things to bring out the best in the people that work there. And a lot of folks are very interested in strategy because it helps companies decide what direction they want to go, make some very important decisions. So I'm going to share a little story that gives an example about what we do. But I want to introduce my colleague, Tom, who is going to share a little bit about himself and a project that he's been on. It gives you an idea about why this business chemistry stuff is important.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Yep. So my name's Tom Wooten, also with Deloitte. I'm very excited to be here with you guys today. So a little bit about what I do on the consulting side. I work in our strategy practice, but the folks that I mainly work with essentially are CFOs with technology companies, and I help them through mergers and acquisitions. I help them plan for what the transaction is going to look like, how the new company is going to be structured, how they're going to run it, and then ultimately, after they close the transaction, how they're going to bring those companies together and gain benefits and value from that transaction. So that's the focus of the work that I do. When I do that work, I obviously don't do it by myself. I typically work with teams very closely of 7 or 8, and a lot of these projects will even have teams up to 100 people when you include the strategy side, the technology side, the human capital aspect. And so this concept of teamwork and understanding people and adapting to other people's style becomes really, really important.
Very fair. Thank you. Just one more slide, as I mentioned, around what we do to provide some context, and then we'll get right into the business chemistry stuff. Just to give you an example, I've worked at the firm for 18 years. I have worked mostly in financial services companies. So if you are interested at all in trading, you invest whatsoever, a lot of those companies have been my clients. And they invest an awful lot in making sure that they have the technology in place to keep markets up, to keep information flowing to your account, to make sure that the finances all work. And so we spend a lot of time helping clients do that. Okay? So ultimately, I talked a little bit about solving problems. So what we try and do is anticipate, innovate, and inspire. And to do that, I would say, in all the years that I've worked with the firm, not one time have I worked all by myself. Every single time has been with a team. Most of the time with that team, I have had to meet them the day we get started and we get going, just like you do here in class, just like you do with other projects. You have to hit the ground running very quickly, right? So let's transition and talk just a little bit about business chemistry. Let me see a show of hands for how many people have taken some sort of a personality kind of test, like Myers-Briggs or DISC or something like that. Have many of you taken those? All right. Now keep your hands up. How many of you, keep your hands up if you remember what your type was? I'm not counting the business chemistry that you just took. Forget that one. But all the others, do you remember what you are? Okay. Now, do you know from that what the person sitting next to you is, by any chance? No, pretty much not, right? Because that's not the way these things are designed. They're designed, really, to understand yourself and that's kind of where it stops. So if you think about good elements about getting along, playing together, teaming, a big part of it is that middle piece around understanding others. So when you took that business chemistry profile, you understood I'm a pioneer integrator, right? Or something like that. But ultimately, what's important is, okay, so now I understand a little bit more about my own style. That's great. But what do I need to know to get along with the person sitting next to me? What about the person next to them? And ultimately, business chemistry is different in that way because it's all about knowing yourself, but it's also about knowing other people. And sometimes it's really hard to get along because these styles are innately different, right? They're innately different. And this helped me out a lot. There were a lot of people that I worked with that I just didn't like working with. Just didn't like being around them, didn't enjoy their style. And now if we understand that people operate differently, they're wired differently, they're born differently, they adapt differently, maybe it'll help us all get along a little bit better, especially when we're trying to get our projects done for school, right? And get our work complete. So we're going to talk about these three pieces: understanding yourself, understanding others, and then adapting your style to make it effective. This, actually, a few little fun facts, just to make a distinction. I think you picked up from Tom and me that we're not professional business chemists, right? This is not what we do all day. We do a lot of things all day that help our clients solve problems. Business chemistry is just a system that we adopted in our firm and developed. It was actually developed in conjunction with a woman named Helen Fisher. And the reason that that's important is she's a social chemist, if you will. And she was responsible, actually, for being one of the founders behind the matching algorithm in Match.com. So we basically took, okay, this is how people interact in their social lives and their daily lives. How can we translate that to the business world and figure that out? So you see four different things here about business chemistry. We've actually had 100,000 people already take it, both inside the firm and outside the firm. I do a lot of work with our clients that are interested in this topic. And we actually have very senior executives that have their teams go through this, that they themselves have gone through this, and it's a big part of how they use that kind of the culture to work better together in teams. So we got a little video, and we'll hope that the audio works.
What do I love?
What do I hate?
What do I love?
What do I hate?
I hate endless discussions.
I like lots of conversation and debate.
I hate to revisit a decision.
I believe in keeping things open.
Decide.
Debate.
I trust the numbers.
Now you can make the numbers say whatever you want.
I need an agenda.
An agenda for a 15-minute conversation. Are you kidding me?
Where's the summary?
Where are all the details? A 100-page deck? A single piece of paper?
The last thing I need is someone getting mixed up in our politics.
Quite frankly, we need a lot of help navigating our own politics.
Shake things up.
Keep the peace.
She basically told me I was full of crap. You know what? I loved it.
Never challenge me in front of my people.
I know where we've got to go.
I need help figuring out where to go.
Golf.
Golf?
Golf.
Golf.
I don't need more friends. It's nothing personal. It's business.
In business, relationships are everything. Ideas.
Execution.
Words.
Numbers.
I trust my gut.
I trust the data.
Always ask permission.
You can always get forgiveness. If it's not on fire, don't contact me.
Ping me 24/7.
Or the phone. Phones are still good.
That's the way it is.
That's me.
That's just me.
That's me.
But, you know, that's just my opinion.
sure. Oh boy. But I think it's kind of interesting how we all have those little things that when we're in a group we kind of need to maintain about ourselves and the way we continue to do projects or business, and it's really easy to forget that everybody else has those same things that might be polar opposite of what we think. So that can definitely lead to a lot of potential conflict.
Thing that you leave today with, it is that thought about it's about other people too, right? So we all have our own evolving style, and that's great. It'll probably help us be very successful in what we're trying to do, but that doesn't mean that our way is the only way. It doesn't mean we're the only, that the way we think is the only way to think, and to think about how other people tend to solve problems and tend to work, in this case in business, is extremely helpful. Okay, so we're going to do a fun exercise. We're going to get out of the chairs, we're going to get moving, get things shaken up a little bit, give you a few instructions here. So we have each primary business chemistry type in each corner of the room, right? Guardians are here, integrators are here, pioneers are here, and that means drivers are over there. So in each corner you'll see some flip charts off to the side. They're back in that corner, they're back in this corner, they're over here, and they're over there. We're going to break into 3 groups. For each of these 3, integrators will break into 4 groups. Okay, so very simple instructions. 1, break into the number of groups as the flip charts that you have next to your table. So 3, 3, and 3, and 4. And then on one, divide into those groups and take 1 flip chart. And it'll be about 8 to 10 people per. Put it up on the table. And then what we'd like you to do is think about what you love and what bugs you about interacting with others. And if it helps, you could even make it interacting in work teams for school or work teams on a job you may have or whatever it may be. So what do you love? What do you have in common that defines you? And what bugs you? And we already know over here, endless discussion bugs some people, right? So that's definitely one. The only ask I have is each team has 1 flip chart. So just use 1 piece of paper for loves, and then use another one for bugs. And then we're going to talk about it once we come back together. Okay? We'll do this for about 10 or 15 minutes. Nothing magic about how you form your teams. You guys decide how to do that yourself. Buddy, it looks like teams are starting to wrap up a little bit, so in about 3 minutes we'll call it. Go back to our tables in about 3 minutes. All right, we'll get back together in just a couple minutes. We'll wrap up. All right. Let's wrap it up. And we're going to do a report out. You guys are going to tell us a little bit about what you decided to put down. Do you have the roaming mics somewhere? Okay, great. So volunteer basis. What group wants to report out what they loved and what bugged them? Let's hear it. We got some mics around here. We'll come to you. Back here in the corner for one. We have the drivers back there. What do the drivers? Let's start with loves first. Let's just do loves. What did you love?
Is it on? Oh, yeah. Okay. We love, like, focus, timeliness, having, like, a clear, basically what this all comes down to is just having a clear goal in mind, focusing on it, and then getting it done efficiently. You can examine all the options, but you can do it quickly and you can do it well. You don't have to waste a lot of time as you're doing it. So we also like people to bring snacks. That's key for good group meetings. Yeah, equal participation, commitment, hard work, and just focus on a goal and get it done quickly without wasting time is what it came down to.
Great. Thank you. Who wants to go next? Loves. What did you guys love? Let's do another driver.
All right, so our loves were communication, when everyone pitches ideas, when someone takes initiative, equal motivation, organization and assigning specific jobs to team members, direction, the devil's advocate side of things, and also collaboration.
Interesting. So let's talk just a second, you're not off the hook yet, about devil's advocate, right? What's inherent in that? You can hand it off. So maybe the person who raised that in the group, why devil's advocate?
I like the devil's advocate just because I hate it when everyone's just like agreeing and it's not the best idea, where the devil's advocate can come in and maybe pitch a better idea that somebody wouldn't have thought of or a different angle.
Very good. That is not an uncommon trait to drivers. Inherent in that is what? Conflict, right? That's actually, and you're going to hear over here, that maybe they don't like that so much. Maybe conflict isn't so great. So one example of how different styles come into play, both equally valid, but very interesting. That's very good. That's a very common thing we hear from drivers. Let's go over here. Let's do some pioneers. I'm surprised they weren't jumping all over this. You got a mic?
The drivers are definitely winning so far.
Yeah, the drivers are
really
winning.
happy to know that.
So our loves were friendship with the idea of meeting new people and honesty in teams, learning something new when you're going through this process, cohesiveness within the group, getting different ideas and having that contrast, working with synergy, openness to everything, dedication, timeliness, creativity, achievement-oriented. We also appreciate a free lunch and motivated team members.
Very good. So free food comes up way more than you'd think in these things, believe it or not. Very good. Let's do one more. And before the other group does the loves right back here, just really compare that to what you heard from drivers, right? They're not the same thing. These are not the same themes that we're hearing about what they like versus what they don't. I think this back group wanted to go.
Okay, so for our loves, we have productivity, communication, ready to go, which is just, ready to be productive. Assertiveness and focus within the group. Also, we'd like openness to communication and achieving that balance within the group. And then openness to ideas as well, and specifics and adaptability.
Very good. So keep in mind that pioneers aren't only pioneers, right? Pioneers have, you all have 4 numbers. And we're going to talk about the balance between those later on today. But I heard some driver themes in there too. Does anybody want to highlight what the driver kinds of themes you heard in there? Yeah, right. It's not that pioneers can't be productive. I'm a pioneer. But we're always kind of off looking for new things, kind of wanting to think big picture. The idea of getting things down to business may not be as much pioneer, but we all have a certain percentage, right, in our business chemistry profiles. Very good. Let's go to integrator. Who wants to step up? We've got a volunteer right here. What do integrators love? And before you go into it, drivers, just keep listening here for what they love and just see how you react to some of the words that you're about to hear, okay? Go ahead.
So we put not only equal participation, but everybody giving 100%. We like when people are easy to communicate with and when it feels like a team, so we have synergy as well. We like when there's a goal that we're all working towards. We put snacks on there too. And we also like innovativeness and new ideas.
That's fantastic. Thank you. So what themes did you hear there? Did you hear how many times she said all of us? All together? Did you hear that theme? Okay, we'll come back to the drivers on that in a minute.
Other keyword, feels. Right?
Definitely.
How does it feel?
How does it feel?
Okay, so for our loves list, we said creating relationships with our team members that goes beyond just whatever project we're working on. Long discussions, trust, active participation, everyone having a voice and speaking up, positivity, creativity, but also coming prepared and on time, team cohesiveness, passion, focus, and conversation.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. So the very first thing, creating relationships. The second thing, long discussions. Drivers, what are you thinking? You like that? See a show of hands for those that like long conversations. Couple people, because you have some integrator. Right? So very interesting. So let's do that again with the loves, guardians, and pioneers. Be thinking about what you hear from the loves in the guardian area. Kara just picked somebody.
Has to volunteer.
Yeah. All right, so we have organization. You got to stay organized here, not just scrambling around. Democracy, so everyone has a say. Humor, you got to keep a light mood so no one takes it too serious. Got to be productive as well because you're there for a reason. we put down to focus on the big picture and open-mindedness, because you've always got to look at new ways to approach things, and showing interest and passion. You know, you got to be engaged in the conversation and efficiency. Like I said before, you're there for a reason. You got to get the job done.
Excellent. Okay. How about this group right up here? Somebody in that group have a...
So we said that we want everyone to contribute a different variety of ideas, a diverse group, well prepared, everyone gets along, democracy, timeliness, trusting your team, and open-minded.
That's good. Does that sound a lot like a different business chemistry type? There's a lot of integrator in there, right? Idea, variety, diverse group, everyone gets along, democracy. So again, it's not pure. Tom, what's your thought?
Well, an interesting question, I think, is you guys mentioned productive, right? What does productive mean to you? If there's an end goal, you reach it. Staying on task. So having some structure to it, right? And coming out with maybe a clear picture, okay? Different people, different types will define productivity in different ways, right? For you guys, that's productive. For the drivers, productivity is definitely getting to the goal, but it's getting there quickly, right? For integrators, it's not productive if people are disagreeing. Even if you're getting to the goal, not productive, right? So different ideas of what productivity means, something to keep in mind.
Okay, let's go around the horn. Oh yeah, do you have a comment? No, I thought you were raising your hand. Sorry. Yeah, anybody have some ideas around what productivity means for pioneers? That's a great question. Anybody want to volunteer? Yeah.
I was going to say probably like a meeting where you get like a lot of new ideas and people are really creative and they're kind of excited about what they're doing.
Almost like we're paying people to say the right
Exactly.
So very different idea. Yeah,
not a plan.
Do you guys consider that productive, sitting around talking a whole bunch of new ideas? No? Not at all? A little bit.
All right.
One of my favorite things about drivers, I'm 4% driver. Getting there quickly. It's fine to talk about new ideas, but wasting time is something we don't want to be doing. And that's one of my favorite things about drivers is get it done. And not only get it done, but get it done first. Be the best as quickly as you possibly can. So let's talk about what bugs drivers. Let's just do one per group here. One report out on bugs, but because we kind of have an idea already. But who wants to do bugs in this group? Let's go to this group over here. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for volunteering.
One of the biggest things for us was definitely wasted time, and time management in general seemed to be a theme. Like we talked about people being late and that kind of thing as well. So kind of touches on what you were just saying.
Very good. Anything else you want to highlight on there?
Another big one was probably, I guess, freeloaders. We did talk about that a lot. We don't like, it's like social loafing within a group. Like people to show up on time, be ready to work, and be motivated to do that. So.
Okay. Yes. I love that too. And this is something, just to share a quick little story. I have been working lately with a partner of ours who is a very, very, very strong driver. I'm a very, very strong integrator. She's very powerful in the firm. She's on the board. She just wants to get things done. I have learned on conference calls that when I ask her how her weekend was, because that's my style, my goal as an integrator is to build rapport. Make sure we have a connection. Make sure we understand each other. I can tell you out of maybe 5 attempts to build relationship like that, she has still never once asked me anything in return. Not once. Because she wants to get down to business right away. Okay? Thank you very much. Pioneers, who wants to report out some bugs? Let's go to that team.
We had stubbornness, overexcited, disrespect, talking when other people are talking, overpowering, raising your voice, taking criticism personally, underachieving, when that's not a very good one. Lack of communication, non-participation, passive-aggressive, too focused on little details, and too controlling.
Okay. So what did you hear as a theme in there? Too controlling, right? Not focused on ideas or details, not focused on little details. By the way, Guardians are known for focusing on little details, right? That's part of what comes out with Guardians. Okay? New ideas, new things, fresh ideas, teams coming together to innovate. Yep, fantastic. That's integrators. We're gonna talk about that in a minute. Okay, integrators.
Okay, so for our bugs, we had people that agree with everything, which leads to groupthink. Free riders, people who start unnecessary arguments, leaders who are overpowering and talk over people, people that make assumptions, which leads to poor communication, people who are unfocused, distracted, and distant, people who are unreliable and who don't contribute to their responsibilities, and people who don't follow direction.
So what'd you hear there? Lack of unity, dissension, conflict. You said something about overpowering, a leader overpowering a group. Okay. Very good. Guardians, what do you think? Who wants to report out their bugs?
Okay, so our bugs were people coming unprepared, social loafing, drama, bad communication, bad flexibility, bad attitudes, disrespectful people, and people being closed-minded.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I'm curious, when it comes to things you categorize as bad, does that mean that there are rules for what constitutes good and bad? There must be, right?
When you have attitudes, you can have really good attitudes that really help a group, but you can also have really bad attitudes that could bring your whole group down. So that's why we said bad attitudes.
So in other words, there's a tried and true way in which people should maybe interact, a way in which people should respect each other. Societal norms, those are important aspects of interaction. Okay, that makes sense, right? That fits with the whole Guardian mold of wanting to have a certain set of kind of understanding of rules and following of rules and things that are structured and in place. All right.
We're going to just do a couple more minutes on one other thing as well. I'd like to ask some of the roving group as well for their input on this. And that is, we were watching you as you started to form teams and how you decided to kind of come together to actually do the exercise, right? Because drivers and integrators and guardians and pioneers are going to do things differently when they get together as a group, a consistent group of this type. Did anybody want to volunteer, observers or otherwise, what you saw in terms of engagement about how these groups play along? That is a great example, right? This isn't going the way I want to go. I'm going to go start something else. We'll just begin a new thing and go from there. Excellent. Yeah. Lindsay. What did you notice? Sometimes integrators take a while just to build those relationships before you even start writing things down. Did you notice what kind of interactions took place once the groups were formed? Love it. Awesome. What else? What else? Mike, did you see something?
Yeah, I just noticed back in the corners in this area here, I'm a driver also, and I noticed that they quickly got down to business, grabbed the flip charts and started, really cranking out some good descriptions. And particularly the table over here, they got going so fast that they didn't even bother to go to the second page. They put both on the first page because they had a goal. They wanted to get down to business.
Get it done. Get it done. That's right.
So over here it was easy because we have 6 tables. There's 3 charts.
super easy to split up, and that happened really quickly. And I noticed that we started over here with a lot more bugs. So I thought that was interesting. The Guardians are like, what annoys me about other people right away. So.
That's a new one, Kira. I've been doing this a long time. That's a very interesting observation. Not new meaning different, that you call that out early. I think that's really important.
Yeah,
that's
I think a lot of people, so they put a few loves down or started with bugs, did a lot of bugs, and then went back to the loves. And we're like, I guess we have to fill this one out too.
So there's no hearts or ladybugs over here at all.
No, absolutely not.
I was just
No
making
drawings.
sure. Okay. Now, it didn't happen here this time, but having facilitated these with executives, a lot of times we see a difference in terms of how you actually write it out, the graphical representation, right? I wouldn't have been surprised if the pioneers had pulled off those Post-its, put them on the wall. Maybe they kind of had different categories of different things all over the place. Not uncommon for Guardians to be very structured. Bullet points. The bullet points are over there. Excellent. So it's not uncommon to see very good, decent amounts of structure. Okay? Thank you very much for doing this. I think I'm going to drain a few slides here, just a little bit more to drive the point home. But I think we all got it, right? I think this is very instructive around. Basically, in the business community, the way the percentages shake out is that it's about 25, 25, 25, 25, right? So on average, you're going to have people on your teams that are not the same style as you, and in fact, may like and dislike a lot of things that you don't. So, I mean, any general reaction? Is this kind of enlightening? Are you buying it? Does it feel a little not right? Based on your personal experience, kind of, what are your reactions so far? What do you think? Yeah. It's all right.
I thought it would be more helpful personally if instead of doing just like the top one, you did the top two, because I felt like when we were doing the charts, like it would kind of come out that people were like one, but they were also like partially the other, whereas having you just in one doesn't seem specific enough, I guess.
It's a very great point. And we do that for the sake of time, but the reality is you have all different kinds of business chemistry mixes at your table. You're not all just pioneers. One back here.
I'm wondering why, when we take these personality tests, why we don't just get paired up with people like us instead of...
Be a lot easier, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be easier.
I like to do that with my clients too, right?
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
I don't want to work with you. I want to work with you.
That's why.
Yeah.
So, because at the beginning of last semester, like I was in the first group that just picked right away. And so we must have all been drivers. I see one of the people in my group over there. And it actually worked really well, so I find that kind of funny.
Yeah, really interesting. Our hope here, obviously, today is that when you leave, that when you continue to work in teams, this continues to be part of your psychology around how you relate to other people, right? And it helps. Okay. Let's drain this just a little bit more, and then we're going to take a break. I know when I say the word break, you all go somewhere else, but try and stay with me for like 2 minutes. So just reinforcing some of the things that we just talked about, right? Novelty-seeking, adaptable, energetic, expressive, collaborative, spontaneous, risk-taking. What I think is funny, I always used to say, I don't do it anymore, but I used to say all of my hobbies are things that are on like a life insurance exclusion policy. Jumping out of planes, flying planes, motorcycles, mountain climbing, all that stuff. That's what I like to do. So when I look at this slide, I relate to it. I like it. I'm like, yeah, I think risk-taking is fantastic. I admire risk-taking. I value risk-taking. Well, there are a lot of people I work with who may not feel the same way. On the other side, though, if you're sitting across from a pioneer and you're not one, you may view pioneers to be some of these things. Not great things, right? Unpredictable, reckless, manic, susceptible to boredom. Again, I kind of relate to that, so I kind of like it. But people who aren't that way may not appreciate that quite as much, right? Does that kind of resonate for those of you who are not pioneers, maybe even guardians? Like, this is kind of annoying. You're trying to get some work done. You're trying to get down to the details. These people are off talking about, what if we did this instead? Or how if this worked? What if we tried that? Yeah? Anything? Okay. Richard Branson is an example of a pioneer, right? I think very few people would argue with that. Has started hundreds of businesses. My favorite one at the bottom, he was known in school before he dropped out of college. Somebody said about him that he's either going to be a millionaire or in jail. It turns out he's done both. He succeeded in both. So again, maybe a little reckless. Think about it, for hundreds of companies that he started, how many have failed? So a little bit of tolerance for trying things again. All right, let's talk about Guardian. I'm going to turn it over to Tom to talk about the next two. Guardians can be known to be, and notice the slide is a little different in terms of how it's organized, right?
It's probably like that better.
Yeah. Methodical, detail-oriented, planning, respectful, risk-averse. I mean, that's exactly polar opposite to what we just talked about, right? Risk-averse, conventional. So this helps in personal lives too. And I think about friends that have different political views than I do, or a relationship with a girlfriend or a boyfriend, something like that. Sometimes these issues come into play. So the negativity, a pioneer might consider a guardian to be persnickety. I've had people ask me what that word means. I guess we don't use it every day, do we? Exacting, stubborn, rigid, closed-minded. Not all things you really want to be known for, but could very much be strengths in certain jobs, certain situations. Let's think about that, right? I don't probably want a high pioneer to be my accountant. I do not want somebody taking chances with my finances. I want somebody who's very meticulous, methodical, practical, right? On the other hand, not too many accountants maybe start businesses. When we heard the quote, one of the quotes of one of the pioneers, it's, I don't look at the numbers, I go with my gut, right? So those two things may not necessarily go together. It doesn't mean it can't happen. I'm not ruling it out. It just means we don't see it very often. So Janet Yellen, chairperson of the Fed, a cool head who prepares carefully ahead of time, a genius for expressing complicated arguments clearly. She articulates her position in a way you can follow it analytically. Everything was fact-based. Again, somebody I want in that job, right? Somebody affecting the economy, a global economy or the US economy, detail-oriented, focused, exacting, precise. So Tom, what do you think about driver?
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about our drivers. So in that exercise, and it's always fascinating, the pioneers typically get started first because they really want to get going. The drivers usually get started second, and it bugs the heck out of them because they want to be first, right? And they usually finish first, especially when we don't give them a time limit or anything. They usually finish first. And so I always find that to be fascinating about our drivers. So here's a few more things that we've observed about drivers in general. And again, you'll see the slide sort of reflects, both from a color perspective and from a structure perspective, some of the things that drivers like, right? They tend to be more logical, right? They're direct. They are driven. They're what we call intellectually creative. They tend to be mechanically or technologically savvy, and they like systems like computers that have structure. A lot of times they're folks who really, they'll get that quickly, right? They'll be engineers. This is what we a lot of times think of as our typical type A personalities, right? But as Scott mentioned, all of us have sort of this other side of us, this side of us that other people might observe and say, you know what, I see some things that maybe aren't so great, and they can be impatient, right? They can be demanding. Our drivers can certainly be less empathetic, and they can have what we call mind blindness, right? Which is, I have a certain direction that I'm going, and nothing else really matters. Not the people, not whatever what anyone else is saying or disagreeing in terms of their opinion. They've got a certain direction, and they're going there, right?
Hey, Tom, if I could add in there for one quick second. I have a colleague who worked for a driver for many years, and I'm working with one now, as I mentioned. His favorite thing to say, he's a pioneer, his favorite thing to say was for 5 straight years, he always thought he was going to get fired. Always. This person was very exacting, was pretty aloof, was demanding and impatient. So that conveys an attitude of, you may not be meeting my expectations. So that can be scary. It can be a difficult thing.
Yeah, I do. A lot of the work that I do is with CFOs and accountants.
That's chief financial officers.
Chief financial officers, thank you. Controllers, accountants, folks who are running sort of the numbers within the business. They tend to be either drivers or guardians, right? I myself, very similar to Scott, am a pioneer, 49%, and an integrator, 47%. How in the world does this ever work, right? See, the odd thing is, yeah, thankfully, I always think my clients might be on the verge of firing me. On the other hand, I bring a different perspective, right? I bring a perspective that they don't necessarily have because they very much like their systems and the way they're used to doing things, and I can bring a perspective that they might not necessarily have thought through. Now, one of the things we wanted to highlight as we start to talk about our drivers is that there are different flavors of personalities for some of our groups based on whether they're more inwardly focused or more outwardly focused. And what does that probably sound like to you guys? Anyone extroverts? Introverts? Yeah, extroverts, introverts. So that's bringing in this concept of extroversion and introversion, right? There are different flavors for drivers depending on sort of which direction they're focusing. If they're focused more inward, we sort of call them, the archetype there is the scientist, right? Tend to be more maybe daydreamers, musical, skilled at recognizing patterns, a little bit more on the reserve side, right? On the extroverted side, the commander, right? Think of like your typical military commander, right? They're disciplined, they're energetic, they are punctual, and they're realistic, right? So those are some of the, I guess, sort of stereotypes there. We'll talk a little bit more about that extroversion and introversion side of things here in a minute. Our example here is Irene Rosenfeld, who's the chairman and CEO of Mondelez. And I think the thing that I like here, well, I like the quote, right, where she talks about patience. It's apparently not her virtue. She has a great sense of urgency, right? The other thing that I like here is that she, if you followed Warren Buffett at all, Warren Buffett, Oracle of Omaha, very, very rich gentleman, probably knows a thing or two about investing. Well, she basically publicly brawled with Warren Buffett over an investment that she decided that her company was going to make. Warren Buffett sold 33 million shares, and she still carried forward with it, right? Very much, I've decided this is the direction I'm going, and that's what we're going to do. Warren Buffett, forget it. I don't need your advice, right? Okay, so that's our drivers, right? Now let's talk a little bit about our integrators. And integrators, I want to thank you all for your patience. There's a reason we put you last, right? I always joke, this kills the drivers, right? Because they're third, and they're like, what the heck? But our integrators we put last, and you guys don't usually mind because you're really fascinated about hearing about these other groups, and you want to get to know them. It's true. So our integrators, right? Our integrators are consensus-oriented, right? They're empathic. In other words, they really focus on feelings. They value relationships. They're contextual, right? You guys want to know sort of the context of a discussion. Tend to be a little bit non-linear, right? Whereas your drivers and your guardians are going to be a little bit more point-to-point. Your pioneers are going to be sort of all over the place. Integrators don't necessarily mind, being a little bit circular with things, especially if it has to do with the relationship. And tend to be a little bit more on the creative side, right? We noticed, someone was drawing up hearts and bugs and things like that. That's absolutely a typical integrator trait. Now, what are some of the things that other people observe about integrators? Oh, yeah, I heard it. I heard it. And it was backstabbing, right? Oh, gosh. What is that?
Not flattering.
What does that mean? And we always get that. I love that slide because we always get the reaction from this corner of the room. They go, right? And the reason is, okay, so here's the example, right? Let's say that you're in a meeting, right, or you're in a team discussion, and you have a group that's diversified, and you have a driver in the room, okay? And as a group, you have a discussion, you come to a consensus about the direction that you're going to go. Except you guys, right, the integrators, our integrator group, can tell that there's someone that is not speaking up, right? And it's not a spoken thing, obviously. It's just you can tell, right, based on their body language and how they're feeling, and they have something that they haven't sort of brought to the group, right? Meeting adjourns, drivers are off and running, right? A decision's been made, they're going. You guys go and have a secret conversation with that person who you know is feeling like they weren't included, right? And you want to bring them back into the fold. Well, what you guys view as sort of bringing that integration, right? Bringing that together, our drivers are now viewing that as backstabbing. They're going, look, we made a decision. What are you guys doing? Like, we're going. Like, they didn't speak up. That's their problem, right? And so we say this not to be harsh or anything, but this is another group's perception of some of the things that you guys might do. And it's important when you're interacting in groups to keep these things in mind, right? Because it's not that that wasn't necessarily a good thing to do for the overall group dynamic, but it's definitely going to be viewed differently by different personality types as far as whether or not that was something that was necessary. Okay? Okay, outward and inward flavors, I'll hit these quickly. For the integrators, there's the dreamer side, right? That one's pretty self-explanatory. Tends to be more inward focused, definitely on the daydreaming side, maybe changing their mind a little bit, more on the reserved and introspective. The teamer, right? That's the networked, dutiful, sort of wanting to go out and meet other people, right? What you might think of as your typical sort of extrovert who's sort of bubbly and wants everybody to know them and get along, right? So that's the outward and inward flavor there. Our example here is Tony Tsai, right, who was the founder of Zappos, right? And I really like the first part of the quote here where he says, "I like to think of our vendors as friends," right? These are certainly not competitors. These are people who we're building like an ecosystem essentially. We respect and value our relationship and want to see each other do well, right? That is a very a very typical integrator statement, right, that they would have. Okay. So I said I'd hit sort of briefly on this role of introversion versus extroversion, right? This is the way that it typically falls out, right? Our pioneers are more on the extroverted side. Our guardians are more on the introverted side. And we have sort of this dichotomy between drivers and integrators where they could kind of go one way or the other. The thing that I want to point out here is that because everyone is a mix of different business chemistry types, this isn't to say that every single pioneer is an extrovert and every single guardian is an introvert. It just tends to be sort of how you come across in more of your natural, people's natural observance of you, right? And there are certainly people, in fact, a lot of people in this world, who are what we tend to term omniverts, right? Which is, depending on the way in which they are interacting with people, they may come across as more introverted or more extroverted, right? And so this is really based more on sort of other people's observation of how they interact with you, more so necessarily than maybe what might be natural for you. The other thing I'll point out is it could be different based on your role, right? It could be different based on how you interact with different groups, because all of us have a mix of personality types that will turn up or down depending on the situation, right? And it's important to realize that you are adaptable in that way. So one thing we wanted to highlight, for those of us maybe who are a little bit more data-driven as well, is who is in the room, right? And how does that compare with your overall cohorts, right? So in the room here today, we've got a very good mix, right? But we also have 31% integrator, which is why they had 4 groups for that exercise versus the others. And as a whole, right, it's very evenly split. So Scott mentioned this as well earlier. This matches up very much with our findings around society in general and people who have taken this test in business. It's pretty evenly split across your entire cohort, right? So something to keep in mind, when you're in groups, you probably have a pretty good chance of having people who are not just other chemistry types, but a pretty good mix probably of these different chemistry types. Very good. Okay, so I think with that, we ran through it fairly quickly, but we know that you guys probably want to take a little bit of a break. We're going to take a little bit of a break. Scott, how long are we going to break for?
We are going to start up in 10 minutes because we have a lot to cover for the rest of the time together. We'll see you in 10 minutes. That would be quarter after. Everybody, we're going to start in 1 minute. 1 minute. Let's do it. Let's go ahead and get started. Still see a lot of phones out, a lot of laptops open, a lot of talking. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so if you remember all the way back to the beginning of this class this morning, I know many of us, including me, were not totally awake. I asked you to raise your hand about Myers-Briggs, and then I asked about how many of you really knew what the Myers-Briggs type was of the person next to you. And of course we don't, right? I wouldn't begin to know what Tom's Myers-Briggs profile was. But that's what this part's all about, is understanding other people. The ability to actually get out of yourselves and be present in a situation and really understand your surroundings and the type of people you're working with. That is a difficult skill. And believe it or not, we actually have courses at our firm where we train our executives on how to be better at that. We call it the art of empathy. Empathy, the ability to get out of yourself, to relate to other people, understand what they are thinking, what they are feeling. I bet many of you, including myself, would not have expected that empathy is a huge topic in the business world today, but it actually is. We are spending lots of time and money on how we as human beings are better at relating to other people. Think about people you like to do business with. They understand you as a customer. They pay attention to what you think, what you feel. We're not so big on people who drive ahead with their own agenda, right? That doesn't work as well. Rob? I also, on that thought, Rob, which is excellent, he mentioned, for those of you who didn't hear, that the pioneers came in, or the ones that came in late. This morning, it was the Guardians who got here first. They did. This table filled up faster than any other early this morning. All right, so let's talk a bit about how we can get out of ourselves, become more empathetic about understanding others. The key word for this section is hunching. Hunching, right? So the ability to look next to you, say, well, or my friend, somebody that you know, say, well, based on what I see, based on what I hear, based on what I know, I think they may have a different outlook on life, right? Different business chemistry profile. If you really take a little time to kind of dive into this, you'll see we do a nice job of generalizing and stereotyping here, but we can still use it effectively to help hunch. So if I'm a pioneer driver, I generally am probably someone who likes rapid decisions. I can tolerate risk. I can take charge. Some of the key themes we just heard earlier before the break. If I'm a, let's do me, pioneer integrator, optimistic, spontaneously generous. I love that. Big picture thinkers, emotionally expressive. You might be working with a pioneer integrator if you see some of those qualities. Now, obviously, it's not perfect. This is, everybody's a very complicated human being driven by a lot of different things. I can tell you, generally speaking, we have embedded this concept into our firm, and people are getting pretty damn good at hunching other people and adapting to their style so that we can work better together. One way to hunch is just to open your ears and listen to what you hear. We heard back here, conflict is good. We like to be devil's advocate. Well, drivers, you see that word debate? So it turns out when that partner driver I keep talking about keeps wanting to debate me, she's not arguing with me. She just likes a healthy form of conversation. I need to understand that. It's not personal. She's just combative and annoying. That's all. I kid. But fun and dynamic, pioneers, kind and personal, integrator, honest, using the word should. We should be doing this. We should be doing that. An honoring of a tradition, an honoring of the past, an honoring of the way we do things. Right?
One in particular that I listen for a lot when I'm in conversations is think versus feel. Right? Drivers are going to tend to say think. Integrators are going to tend to say feel. Right? So those are definitely, and should is another. There's some key words you can definitely listen for as people talk.
Above the neck, using your brain, below the neck, down in here. Yeah, very good. Okay, so let's do some speed hunching. We went through some examples before. Let's see how many people can do a good job of figuring out what Mark Zuckerberg might be. I don't know that we've given him this. He's one of our clients. But we just put some quotes up here for the exercise. So, is known to be a private person, does not speak to the press, expects debate, takes on a new personal challenge every year, once had a business card that read, I am CEO bitch. I presume that that's what that word is. It's hard to figure out. So what do you guys think? To me, I see two different things in here, right? I don't necessarily see one. What do you guys think Mark Zuckerberg might be?
And you guys have cards on your tables, by the way. You should have 4 of them. If you've got an idea, you can hold it up.
You can hold it up.
So what do we think here? I'm getting a lot of driver, some pioneer. Okay.
Love this. Love it.
Some guardian. Okay. All right. A little more guardian.
Okay. So I think this is great. I think we can all agree that the driver piece really comes out, right? What do we hear about driver? What made you think? What made you pick driver? The last quote, the business card. Okay. How about a personal challenge? Right. That's a big one for a driver as well. What about the other one? I kind of see if you read wary and private, you could read guardian, but it could be he's just more naturally introverted. I saw some pioneers up here. Is this because of what you know about Mark in terms of what he's done, or more about what you see up here? Yeah, go ahead. He's going pretty out there to have that on his business card. Totally agree. Totally agree. Okay, let's move on to Wayne Gretzky. So this could be, I'm worried that this is a generational thing. I know Wayne Gretzky. How many people? Yeah? Okay, good. I got to, of course we know Wayne Gretzky. Come on. All right, dedicated to and meticulous about hockey, all about practice, humble, loyal, modest, not that competitive. So let's just do primary first. What do you think he is primarily? And this is not something you'd expect. If you know about Wayne Gretzky, if you've read his biography, this makes total sense. But I would not normally think this about a professional athlete. What do you guys vote? Let's see the cards.
Whoa.
Paper cut.
The Guardians think Guardian.
Pioneers
Integrators
thought
think
Pioneers
Integrator.
from before. Yeah. Tom just made an observation. A lot of the integrators over here are picking integrator. A lot of the guardians are picking guardian. So let's look to the back of the room for some tie breaking.
A little bit of both.
All right.
Mostly guardian though.
This works, right? Because it's a pretty good chance that we're right.
Yeah.
So who would have thought? Meticulous, loyal. The guy became one of the best hockey players in the history of the game by working his butt off and practicing all the time. He was a scientist of the sport. Practice, 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 diligence, meticulous attention to the game.
And this is something that I think I always found to be an interesting observation that I wouldn't necessarily have connected. A lot of professional athletes are guardians. They're guardians because it takes so much dedication to do the same thing repetitively over and over and over and over to become that great at it. So golfers, baseball players, hockey players, right? A lot of times, guardians.
So think about it, Pioneers. Would you have the wherewithal to go to the same practice, doing the same thing think about a ski jumper, right? One activity over and over and over and over to be the best in the world. I personally would struggle with that. I can't go into the office and do the same thing every day without wanting to jump out a window. So the variety is extremely important. So that's a good linkage.
I like shiny objects. Just shiny object. Right?
Oh, look, squirrel.
Exactly.
Okay. Jenny Rometty, she's somebody that is a friend of the firm, actually, our chairman and president and CEO of IBM. Ask me what I believe first. And the key word there, I think, is believe, right? Put that down here, maybe. Recognized her personal approach to leadership, leads from her head and her heart. Have made a lot of mistakes when she didn't move fast enough or didn't take enough risk. What do you guys think? What do you think?
Okay, a lot of integrator.
And this time the Guardians aren't saying Guardians, so.
I know. Primary one's pretty clear here.
Yep. Yep. So what tipped you off? Maybe not moving as fast as maybe another business chemistry type? Leading from the head and the heart? Right? All right. So you guys are smart people. I bet you can guess. Ellen DeGeneres. I don't live in fear. I'm free. I have no secrets. I'm open. I like being unique. She's her own toothbrush. Never follow someone else's path unless you're in the woods. What do you got? Pioneer?
All right, yeah, that one's pretty clear.
Okay. Okay, so I would challenge all of you. It's one thing to know that's important to get out of yourselves and think about what the people are you're talking with, working with, relating to, and be better about relating to others. I would challenge all of you to do that over the next several weeks in your team effort, even maybe in your personal life, because it's a step of growth. It was for me to start thinking about, in my surroundings, how do I identify what other people are all about as opposed to just what I'm all about. So with that in mind, turn it over to Tom to talk about, oh, wait, we've got one other quick exercise. Well, based on time, let's keep going. So in case any of you are interested, we do have some papers on the table that's called A Meeting of Minds. And really, it's about classmates working together for the first time. And the question is, based on what you see on that number, what's your best hunch of business chemistry style? Right? So for the sake of time, I want to make sure we get through this third part because it's really important. We're going to skip over this in detail, but I want to jump right to the answer, right? So we can talk about it a little bit. So who's most likely to number 7? Vigorously debate their point. Vigorously debate. Drivers, right. At number 9, ask people about how their day or classes are going or their favorite flavor of ice cream. Integrators. All right? I mean, now that we've been doing this an hour and 15, I think we got this, right? So I don't think we need to break out of the tables. But let's pick number 6, nod encouragingly to the person speaking. Right here, group hug. Kumbaya, everybody. Yes. And again, if you're not that style, just think about how you react to that, right? Like, vigorously debate their point and not encouragingly to somebody speaking is two very different things, right, about how you feel about that. And then lastly, request additional details about the assignment or project at hand. Guardians or Drivers? Right over here. Yep, one or the other, one of these two. Okay, so let's talk about, my battery just died. I'll drive. Or the laptop froze up. One or the other. Let's pause for station identification. Yeah. There we go. I can drive.
Okay, got it. Okay. Sorry for the brief pause there. Okay, so I want to start talking about adapting your style with a story. And the reason I want to start with that is, well, it's very important, right, to understand yourself. And one of the great things about business chemistry is it also makes it much more intuitive to understand others. And I think we've all started to really understand that and internalize that. I think the most lasting impact of business chemistry is actually your ability to adapt to others. And it's probably the most important trait that you will need in the business world, right? Or even when it comes to just working with your own teams, is the ability to recognize, but then also say, how do I want to adapt so I can better work with this person, right? So let me tell you a story. A couple years ago, took a trip to Israel, right? It was one of my bucket list trips. And I was there for 2 weeks. I flew into Tel Aviv, and I wasn't going to rent a car, right? Because I didn't want to try to drive in a foreign country like that. Even though I'm a pioneer, I knew it was a little crazy. So I went and got a cab to go to my hotel, which was in Jerusalem. And I get in the cab, and I go, I'm going to Meyer Shaham. That's the name of the street with the hotel and stuff. And the cab driver just looks at me. He goes, well, they don't, I assume, of course, being American, everywhere I go, they speak English, right? But of course they don't, right? He only speaks Hebrew. In fact, a lot of the cab drivers in Israel only speak Hebrew, right? So what I do is I proceed to say the same thing louder and with more emphasis, right? As if that's going to help. And of course it doesn't. So he, being smarter than I am, gets out his phone, calls a friend, right? Hands it to me. His friend speaks English, and he translates for me as far as where we're going, right? And the point of this is, right, a lot of times that's what we do with our personality types, right? With our personality types, we tend to speak louder and more egregiously when we're not interacting with someone well, when in fact what we need to do is adapt. We need to speak a different language, right? So let's talk about what it looks like to speak a different language. Okay. Let's talk about what types speak different languages. Language of connection. I want you to hold up a card for the type you think speaks the language of connection. You got it. Integrators, right? Exactly. Pretty straightforward. Language of stability. Language of stability. Guardians. Exactly. Right? That's our guardians. Okay. Language of novelty. Pioneers. Exactly. Okay. And last one, language of goals. All right. Exactly. That's our drivers, right? And so we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about each of these different types and how to interact with them and how to adapt your style. And then we're going to do a short exercise to really, I think, drive the point home. So pioneers, right? We talked about the language of novelty, right? If I wanted to connect with someone who's a pioneer, pioneers, give me an example of how someone would connect with you, right? What would resonate? Okay. Okay, so maybe having a goal, maybe coming with ideas. Okay, being a good goal. Okay, a good goal. Okay, interesting. Yeah, what else? Having a good icebreaker, right? So drivers, you hate icebreakers, but if you're trying to connect with a pioneer, maybe you actually take some time for one. But, right, some pioneers also have a driver tendency to them, and maybe they don't like that either, right? This is where the nuance comes in, right? It's not about you anymore, it's about the nuance of that person. Yeah?
I think a really cool and important thing when like working with myself is I really like people who listen to me. You know, like I know it may
listen
not be
to
like
me.
the most important thing, but it's an idea, and maybe just listen to it and then give feedback.
Yes. Okay, absolutely. So a few of the things that we called out, right, where we typically try to connect with pioneers, exploring ideas, right? Pioneers tend to like brainstorming. So a lot of times when we're working in groups that have a lot of pioneers, we'll basically we'll do a brainstorming session, right? And we'll purposely couch it as, hey, everything's really open, right? We want you guys to explore this, right? And that'll get them really engaged, right? Or discussing what they do, right? They tend to like to talk about, hey, here's what I do, and like they'll get very expressive about that, right? And they'll start to use hand motions, and that's how you can tell that they're starting to engage, right? I'm 49% pioneer. I like to use my hands and get into things, all right? How about presentations, right? Presentation style. If we're talking to you through a presentation or we're sitting in a meeting with a pioneer, what do you guys tend to like to see?
Energy and enthusiasm.
Exactly. Energy and enthusiasm, right? Creative, exciting, expansive, fewer details, more pictures, right? That sort of thing, right? That's our pioneers, right? So for those of you guys who are not pioneers and this isn't as natural, when you're looking to connect with a pioneer, be thinking about some of these things, some of these topics, right? Okay. Now, let's talk about our guardians a little bit. Guardians, you have the language of stability. What are some of the ways that you like to connect, right? When you interact with people, what are the ways that you like to interact with them? I didn't say the rules of this ahead of time, so I apologize for that. Anybody? Volunteers? Okay. No, that's okay. We'll move on. So, a couple ways to connect with guardians, right? Emphasizing that it's the right things, right? The things that have been tried and true, right? The things that have worked in the past, right? Or the ways in which things have been successful, right? What is typically normally emphasized, right? Or normally focused on will resonate more with guardians. I mean, does that resonate with you guys as well? A little bit? Okay. Not getting a lot of emotional response from the guardians. Not surprising necessarily. What about presentations, right? When someone sits down with you and like gives a presentation to you, what do you like to see?
I like to see a lot of organization in the presentation.
Okay.
If it's nice and orderly, it's easier to follow and take notes, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So more concrete, logically structured, and linear throughout?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's graphs.
Yeah. What about data?
Yeah, that's very helpful. It's easier to understand.
Okay. Yeah. You like something that has maybe a little bit more richness in terms of the details. If I just put I've literally done presentations before where I put a picture of a piece of bread. Okay. Right? And I speak to that. And for the guardians, they're like, what in the world is that? Like, that doesn't tell me anything, right? But if I put up a chart, right, that had data, but it was, structured and easy to recognize what it meant, right, what it conveyed, then that would come across much more effectively. All right. Now, how about our drivers, right? The language of goals, right? Drivers, when you connect with someone, what do you like to see? All right, we got a hand up in the back already.
Do I say or? Okay.
Go ahead in the back.
So your question, when I met someone, what do you usually say?
Yeah, when you're talking with someone, how do you like people to connect with you? Like, what do you like them to emphasize?
Yeah, usually besides say how are you, later on we'll ask like, what do you want to do? What's their professional goal or what's their life goal? And then we can further build a relation on, like maybe if you like startup and I'm like startup, we can find a company.
Yes. Okay. So and Scott mentioned this earlier, right? You're not gonna have a conversation with a driver where you sit down and you go, hey, how was your weekend? What'd you do? Did you have a chance to connect with so-and-so? No. Like, they're just like, okay, what are we meeting about? I've literally had 5 and 10-minute conversations with drivers, right? It was scheduled for half an hour, and they were like, we got through that in 10 minutes. That was great. Gosh, I love that. I got a whole nother 20 minutes to go get stuff done, right? And so they want to get to the point, right? If you're going to connect with the driver, right, you're going to want to get to the point more. What about from a presentation standpoint, right? So that was sort of the connection. What about presentation? What do you guys like to see?
In a presentation, I think we like to see pretty direct ideas of what's going on, what's going to be happening. We don't really care how you feel about it.
Right.
That doesn't mean anything to us. Tell us, what's going to happen. Why are you doing it? Why are you there?
Yes.
Kind of skip the whole emotional investment part of it.
Yeah, A to B, right? Logical, concise. Maybe the messaging's a little bit more blunt, right? In terms of the, some of the speaking points and how you're talking. Be a little bit more direct. Okay. Now last, we've got our integrators. So integrators, how do you guys like to connect? Almost put the answer up. What do you guys like? How do you guys like to spend your time when you're, in a meeting? What does that look like? Yeah.
Talking about common interests and common hobbies.
Yes. Yeah. So there's definitely more focus on how you feel, right, about the particular topic, maybe about other things that have been going on, right? There's more of an emphasis on that connection piece, right? And there's also sort of, integrators tend to like sort of the long-term thinking, right? So if you are going to give a presentation to an integrator, a lot of times you're going to want to have that whole contextual piece in there, right? So I'll just hit on the presentation piece quickly. So more imaginative, I mentioned contextual, right? Having the big picture in there, right? Something that has a little bit more imagination to it. And humane, right? Maybe less direct, right? You're not going to use as directive a terms like, this is absolutely what we have to do. It's going to be much more open and about sort of having the right words that are going to make people feel like they're able to really connect with the topic, right? Okay, so now we're going to do kind of a short exercise, right? And what I want you to do is I want you to think about a relationship, okay? I want you to think about a person that you would like to connect with, in a better way. Maybe that relationship isn't going so well. And by relationship, I could mean family member, I could mean roommate, I could mean significant other, I could mean one of your siblings. I want you to think of a person where maybe that's not going quite as well as you'd like, okay? Everybody got somebody in mind? Okay, excellent. Now, I want you to take a few minutes to just do a hunching exercise, right, about what that person's business chemistry type is. Not yours, but theirs, okay? Based on the interactions you've had with them, what do you think that person's business chemistry type is? Okay. Doesn't have to be 100% precise, but now what I want all of you to do is stand up, okay? Everybody stand up. This is the hard part. What I want you to do now is I want you to go to the section of that person's primary business chemistry type that you were just thinking of, okay? So integrators are going to go over here, guardians over here, drivers over there, pioneers over there. Remember, this is the person you're thinking of. Integrators, pioneers, drivers. Okay, once you are in that corner, I want you to find one or two other people to talk with, right? And I want you to answer these questions. What were the challenges with this person's personality type? Okay, what worked and what didn't work with that person? And you don't have to get into any specific details about the person. And what can you do differently in the future? Okay? Now that you know business chemistry, what can you do differently in the future? So find, one or two other people to talk with about this person's personality. Yeah, I was going to. Okay. Let's go ahead and wrap it up, and let's go back to our tables, and we're going to talk a little bit about what you learned. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to our tables. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that exercise and what you guys learned. Okay, you guys are actually better at following instructions than most of the executives we work with, by the way. So let's talk a little bit about that exercise and what we learned. First off, I want to see how many of you guys pick someone who has a different business chemistry type than your own. Okay, so most of you. How many of you picked someone that was actually the same business chemistry type? Okay, a handful of you, right? So one thing that I think it's important to keep in mind is while we tend to assume that we'll, I won't say automatically, but we'll get along better with people that are of our own personality type, that's not always necessarily the case, right? Sometimes we actually get along better with people who are opposite than us or maybe to the left or the right, right? I didn't mean to say that twice. Sometimes we get along with people who are different than us, better than people who are the same as us. And it's important to keep that in mind. It doesn't always work that if we have a group, I think someone mentioned, I had a team that was all drivers and we got along great. Well, that isn't always the case. In fact, a lot of times there's a lot of value in having a diverse team. We'll talk about that as we kind of wrap things up. Okay, so I want to get a volunteer to talk about what you learned, right, as part of that exercise. What was your key takeaway, 1 or 2 points about how you might interact differently with that person. And maybe when you do that, kind of say your business chemistry type and what you think this other person's business chemistry type is. We've got one in the back.
I have an older brother who's a computer science engineer, and he's very methodical and quiet. And when I talk to him energetically, he gets really mad. Oh, and I'm a pioneer, and he's a guardian, I think. Yes. So he really doesn't respond well if I come in the room and I'm so excited to talk to him, and he's just don't talk to me. You're so annoying. And so but if I come at him with a plan and very realistic goals and I kind of take charge, he's down. He's all right, let's go.
Okay. Right?
So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's a way to adapt your style to maybe, think through differently how you might interact with him when it's really important. Yeah. Okay. How about another one? Another example. Got to have a hand over here. Okay. One of our integrators.
My mom is a hardcore driver, and I am an integrator, and so our goals in our relationship kind of conflict in that term. She's very hardcore and gets things done right away, and I kind of want to hang out and chat for a while. So
yeah.
That's where we differ.
How might you maybe adapt some of your interactions depending on, I guess what the goal is of, what the goal is with this person?
Maybe just go, I don't know, just be ready to get stuff done when I'm with her because she's all about that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and maybe, so I've had times where I've worked with drivers and they can, there are times when they absolutely want to get things done, and that's really, really important. But I've also found that if I'm more of an integrator, if I want to spend a little bit more time maybe integrating or getting to know them a little bit, if I actually tell them that ahead of time and put it into the agenda, that they're actually a little bit more open to it, right? Because it's part of the time that's built in, right? And it's not necessarily something they weren't expecting, and it's part of when it's part of the structure, it sometimes works better. And I'm not saying always, but that